What's up, everyone? We are live. Welcome to another episode of Durell Coleman's Social Impact Live, where I talk to you about tips and tricks and other things that I've learned on my journey to create social impact in the world, try to help other people um, get their lives to the place that they want to get their lives to. So today what I want to talk to you about just real quick is finding your issue. So there are so many issues in the world that we could focus on. There's so many things that we are pulled into or that pop up on our news feed. And sometimes I know for me personally, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like there's too many things that I'm supposed to be focused on to actually feel like I could make the impact anywhere that I need to make. And so today I just want to talk to you a little bit about that journey. Part of it is just acknowledging that that is a thing that exists, that we experience this feeling that maybe there's too many things to focus on. And the result ends up being that we don't focus on any of them, right? We just sort of shut down. So I want to tell you just a little story about my own journey real quick to find the issues that I really want to be focused on. And it's been a honing process over the course of my life. So as a social impact designer, I first started off creating change and focusing on who could I think about, who could I help, right? And it goes back to the story of me and my brother. I'd gone through this experience where he passed away from cancer, and that had said to me, wow, there are people in the world who are suffering, who are struggling, who aren't being thought of, right? We're not thinking of those people frequently. Very few of us think about kids who are in cancer wards all the time. Very few of us think about people who are homeless, except for when we walk past them on the street. Very few of us maybe think about people who are in jail and have been in jail, people who are, whether they were innocent, and so there are people who are behind bars who've been there for years and years who are innocent, or people who are behind bars who are guilty, but whom we can still think of and think about their needs. So all of these different groups came to mind for me as, wow, these are people who we're often not thinking about. But when I was younger, the group that really dominated that for me was folks in other countries. And I think part of this was because I really wanted to travel the world. I wanted to learn more about other people. I wanted to learn languages. I'm a language learning fanatic. I think that there was this idea that, the challenges in other places, these videos that we see on TV about kids who are starving in Africa, that was something that was really grabbing at my heartstrings at the time. And I wanted to go and do something about those issues, right? The poorest of the poor in the world. And I felt like I needed to go abroad to work with them. And so that's what I did at the very beginning of my journey. As you know, if you've been watching this sort of this show here, I went off to Nicaragua and I did research on how access to electricity affects quality of life, and I designed a product for to generate power for that population. The next year, I actually did some work in Indonesia. I went there to learn more about how access to electricity affects learn more about how an island community there struggles with a lack of access to clean water. There's actually a PBS documentary called Extreme by Design that I'm featured in that talks about that. I went and did research in Brazil about how products are shipped from one part of the country to another. How do you actually move goods from one area, one maybe that's wealthier, that's a port city, to a place that is farther away and that's poorer? And so I went to the poorest region of Brazil to do that research. And I was also researching how people are dealing with issues around glasses and eyesight in a place that doesn't have a lot of access to low-cost eyeglasses, right? So these are the types of issues that I was focused on early on in my career. And I was exploring these different things. And so I think what I would say is that as I went along that path, I began to hone in more and more on the groups and the issues that I really wanted to focus on. I remember one comment my aunt made to me. I was showing her a design or an idea, and she said, well, what are you going to make for the people here in the United States? I remember her saying that at one point. And my thought at the time was, well, the people in the US, they don't have the level of problem as the people in other places, right? That was my quick response to it. That was the story that I was telling myself in my head. But the reality is that comment really did sit with me. It sat with me for a while, and I started asking myself, why is it that you do feel like you need to go way far off to some other place in order to address issues there? Aren't there issues here in your own backyard? So I sort of filed that question away in the back of my mind, until I got to this point where my first venture, my first company, DC Revolutions, failed, right? I was designing these wind turbines, and my company, it failed. I had strayed from the path of design thinking, this methodology that I know is useful and powerful for creating change in the world. And I sort of had to reconstitute what was important. What did I want to focus on? Where did I want to apply my energy, right? And so as I have moved along my social impact journey, I've continued to hone who that group is. And so the thoughts of my aunt at that time came back into my head. And I began to ask myself, what are the issues in the United States that really bother me? The issues here in this country that really, every time they come up, I have a whole stream of thoughts and feelings and emotions about them. And so this would be, for me, the first tip that I would offer to you today would be, ask yourself that question as well. What is it that when you hear about it, it catches your attention? And when you hear about it, you have a whole set of thoughts and feelings and emotions about it as well. Because there's a truth in creating social impact, and it is ultimately that it is a draining, tiring work at times, right? There are times where it's joyous because there are victories. There are times where it's joyous because people's lives are made better. But there are other times where it's a struggle to keep coming back to it. And so the thing that's going to keep us coming back to it over and over again is a deep passion for the actual work, the actual issue, right? The actual people who are involved. So as I continued to search for those issues, I started focusing in on the United States. I started, really just trying to say, how do I do this work overall? How do I build a company that's doing this where I can do this all the time? And I started discovering more and more things. And so I began, my work. I started working on foster care issues, and I learned a ton about foster youth and the foster care system in America. I learned that there are few groups who receive fewer benefits and end up achieving worse outcomes than foster youth in America. And that was something that really struck me, because I said, wow, these are kids who come from different races. They come from different family types. They come from different backgrounds in general. They speak sometimes different first languages, but they have this common set of outcomes associated with the fact that they are being taken care of by the state, right? And what does that say about the system that we've set up then to take care of them, right? So that was eye-opening experience for me. That led me into work on criminal justice reform in Santa Clara County, and helping the local government there to develop a new strategy for jail reentry. How do you reduce the number of people that are in the jails and keep people from coming back, right? And so I started working on that issue. And as I, worked on that and learned more about that as well, I learned a ton more about the history of incarceration in the United States of America, and that became more and more personal to me as well. I mean, a lot of these are issues that I knew something about, right? We all know something about these things, but they're not necessarily the things that we're focused on 100% of the time, and they're not necessarily things that we are the subject matter expert in, right? But as you go through this path, this journey, right, you can begin to focus in and hone in on the things that you ultimately want to work on. And so that would be basically my advice for you. I don't need to go too much further into this, but the question I would have for you to ask yourself is, where am I now? Maybe you're not working on anything yet, and you're just trying to figure out what it is. Then for you, what I would say is pick something. Pick anything that comes to mind to get started with. Bless me, I guess. The second thing is maybe you are working on an issue right now, and the question then for you is this the issue that you want to continue to work on? It's okay to decide that you want to go work on a different issue with a different population. And I think that's something that is worth stating, because sometimes we can feel bad that we have decided that we are going to switch issues, or we feel like we're abandoning a certain population. But what I would say is actually that sometimes our power comes from issues that are personal to us. But I would say the consistency in your ability to deliver great outcomes for people is going to come down to how dedicated and committed you are to the work, to the challenges, to the needs, to the people, right, that you're trying to serve. And so if there is a group that you can feel 100% committed to, where you're like, this is the thing, this is the fight, this is the group that I want to see succeed, and I see the inequities for them, then I would say you should go focus on that group when you get the chance. So those are the sort of two questions, regardless, or depending on which space you're in. But the overarching question is ultimately, where do you want to be, right? What issue do you want to be working on? For me, as I conclude my story, as I have moved forward with my social impact journey, it's sort of been a roundabout thing, but I have increasingly begun to focus and deepened my focus around issues affecting Black America, issues affecting Black people in general, and I want to tell you more about why that is real quick. The issues that I see in America that are most persistently negative, the systems that continue to produce the worst outcomes, tend to affect Black Americans worse than anyone else. Now, that's not always the case, and there are other groups, and I'm not here to compete in the victim Olympics, or say this is the group that has been most harmed. What I'm here to say ultimately is that as I see the issues that need to be addressed, and I think about the intersection of what are the things that really bother me, what are the things that feel that always fill me with thoughts about why that's happening, where I can see things that maybe even others can't see, in part because of my own personal lived experience. It comes back to Black America as well. When I think about where can I have an outsized impact, right? Given who I am, given what I've learned, given the circles that I've gone through, given the gifts that God's given me, it comes back in many ways to Black America. And when I think about my desire to make a broader, deeper impact for everyone, I understand that every time Black America has been lifted up, the nation's quality of life as a whole has been lifted up. And when I look out into the world in general, and I say, well, what's happening in the across the globe to people of dark pigmentation, I see a similar reality, which is that when those folks are lifted up, everyone tends to rise along with them. And so that is my answer to the question that I asked you earlier on. But basically, regardless of what you choose to focus on, I hope those questions and prompts are helpful for you. If you have any questions or thoughts, please leave a comment. If you're watching this on the replay, hit #replay. I would just love to know that you saw it on the replay. If you know someone else who would benefit or who's interested in learning more about how to be an effective social impact innovator, someone, whether they work at a nonprofit, a government, a foundation, or whether they're an individual, they're in high school, they're in college, they're just trying to figure out their path. Maybe you're studying engineering or psychology or whatever it might be, and you want to figure out how do you use that to the advantage of the world in a way that begins to move people out of negative situations and help them achieve what they want to achieve in life. Then share this with them as well, because I'd love to form and build, more and more of a community as we go. I'm going to be here every single day, going live at 9 a.m. Eastern time. But that's what I've got for you today. Like, follow, subscribe, share this, and I'll see you tomorrow. Talk to you then.